you know. But the films are very, very, very different, you know. The other one is a war movie about the Second World War. It looks very, very dark, very adult. So that's nothing to do with us. We are a film for kids and people who wants to laugh. And it's a comedy. It's, you know, it's a space opera. So it's nothing to, you know, I will be much more in trouble if we have like Spider-Man in the front of us or something like this, because that's really the same audience. So, you know.
为了完美再现里克·贝松想象中的科幻世界，《星际特工》2/3的预算都花在了特效上面。制作过《指环王》的维他数码，制作过《星球大战》的工业光魔，设计出电视剧《权力的游戏》里那些波澜壮阔场景的 Rodeo 公司，组成了豪华的特效团队。吕克·贝松认为，特效行业已经发生巨变，各种神奇的视觉效果都能被制作出来，唯一的限制在于人们的想象力。
And you work with 3 post-production companies from 3 different countries on the special effects. Why choose so many of them? Why not just stick one?
Oh, because no one on Earth can do the entire film. Because there is 2,700 shots with special effect, and none of the company can handle the entire film. So we divide in big scenes, you know, like very heavy scenes. And we give the scenes to the one who seems the most appropriate for the scene. So ILM did a big scene called Big Market. It's almost like 700 shots. And Weta get another big part. It's almost 1,000 or more than 1,000. But there's also Rodeo, your company is in Canada, and they specialist on spaceships, you know, like everything mechanical. So they have also lots of shots. But also 2 companies in France, you know, who works on the film. So we work with lots of people, and China, who did the 3D version, and they did an amazing job. So because they're specialists on that too, so everybody has we take the people for what they have to offer the best, in fact.
It is said that you talked to James Cameron when you're doing the film. What did you discuss? What kind of thing?
I have to go to see God.
You are the God in many people's eyes.
Jim. No, he was actually so nice with me. Before I start, I came with a lot of humility to see him and say, you know, can you give me some advice to? And he was very, very generous. Give me a couple of names, and he was very cool, and he's a great guy.
The technology we now use to make the films, how is it different from the time when James made Avatar?
Oh, the big change was with Avatar. Before Avatar, it was another world. And when I did The Fifth Element, it was dinosaur time. It was like, you have to lock the camera for 6 hours and put dots on the walls, and it was a nightmare. And then a year later, you can have your camera on shoulder and do whatever you want. You know, it was totally open after that. When the digital arrived, it changed everything. So this one in Valerian, I really have the feeling that I have all the capacity to do whatever I want. The limit is the imagination now, and it's wonderful.
You said that.
So we're probably going to go back to the artist, to the people, the real creator, because now the technique is there, but we need imagination. So we need to knock on the door of the artist and say, do you have some ideas?
And you say digital change everything. You still use it as a pen and typewriter. You don't use a laptop or computer.
No, I don't have one. I don't have a computer.
Why is that? What's the joy of writing with your typewriter?
I like the contact with my hand, and I can write anywhere, in the plane, on a boat, or anywhere, just a piece of paper and a pen. And there's also a humility about it, because everybody can have a piece of paper and a pen. So I love to start like this, to say, okay, I'm like everyone, and it's just a matter of how much I'm going to work and if I'm going to be good enough. But I like that. And I have so many friends who are writers, and they're on their laptop and they're very proud. And then one day the thing fall on the water or crash somewhere, and then they're in a big trouble because they lose everything. So I don't lose everything with my paper, and I go way faster. And I love to do arrows, like take one piece and put an arrow to the other one.
Yeah, like this one.
Yeah. And you can't do that with a laptop.
Yeah.
And I love to put the piece of paper in front of me, especially for a film, because where is the half of the movie, and you can see the caliber of the scenes much better than on the computer. So.
我想，也许外界对于这部影片商业方面是否成功的质疑，都不是导演最先考虑的。他只是在意的，在那个镜头看出去的样子，是不是他当年在10岁的时候，在巴黎乡下读这部漫画原著时，头脑中想象的样子。
It is that you applied for the French film school back when you were 18, and you listed a lot of Hollywood film directors as your favorite. Now, who inspired you most?
But I never said that this director inspired me. I think the inspiration has to come from life, not from a director.
What about those days when you were a kid, you live in the countryside of Paris?
No, the inspiration comes from everywhere. A director has to go in the world without skin and feel everything. So sometimes if sometimes I'm waiting for someone who is late, 20 minutes, and you're on the bench, and you're working for 20 minutes. You're watching everything. The other day I was watching this tree. He was like probably 300 years old, and I feel so small. I say, my God, he have seen everything. I've seen nothing. So I start to talk to him. Hey, hi, how are you? What's up? And he was so strong. You learn from everything.
Have you ever thought of make a prequel of The Professional or a sequel of Lucy?
I'm thinking always, all the time. So I have an idea every 35 seconds. So yeah, of course I think about it, but the plan is not that for now.
From the following until now, 20 years passed. So what's the viewpoint or philosophy on movie?
I think it was Alan Parker who said all cinema is manipulation. So to call it manipulative is sort of interesting. And I guess the question is, if all cinema is manipulation, which I think it is, it's all choices, and I believe the director has a very strong ability to manipulate the perceptions of the audience. The question is, do you do films where the manipulation is apparent or where it's hidden? So for example, with Dunkirk, a lot of the men on the beach, they were never face to face with the enemy. They were just suffering the ordnance from the enemy. They were suffering the planes coming in and dropping bombs, the mortars and so forth. That fear of the unknown closing in. I'm going to say, okay, I want to involve you in that. I want to let you know that these 3 different timelines, they're running at different timescales, for example. I want you to be aware of that because I sort of want you to be constantly reminded of the limited point of view of each of the stories, that you're trapped in a subjective experience. What I do is I take that capacity for manipulating your feelings towards time and I put it foreground. That really puts you there with those people on the beach, or puts you in the cockpit of a Spitfire, dog fighting the German planes above the beach. I'm trying to involve the audience consciously in that process, rather than it being invisible manipulation. It's honest manipulation, if you like.
What's the most flawed part of yourself?
I don't want to go there. I drink too much tea.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Want some tea? Or you have tea?
I brought my own. Thank you.
Good. So you must be very tired.
Not too bad. I was in Asia anyway, so I'm not jet lagged.
And how about Yeah, we start. Yeah. We start already. Fine. Don't worry.
战争片的一个新鲜体验，不是一个传统意义上的战争片。
拍得很好，有一个很大的一个冲击，
很有脑洞，需要有智商人看。我们都被这个画面给吸引住了。
这片子更像 game， 就是你是进去的。
对。
你那时候真觉得自己是飞行员。
Found it, 11 o'clock.
He's on me.
但你说诺兰的非常独特的控制性呢，它的控制性过强，当然会导致会有一个很好的结果，但也导致了就是我们想看到的更意外的东西没有出现嘛。你是特别挺诺兰的是吧？
肯定打3分吧。
那你比如你们分析，就是他成为一个就是那种所谓的上神坛那样的啊，后面那个整个的社会心理原因是什么呢？
他的2大方法，一个就是他的叙事，在技术方面他很成功；第二个方法就是哲学。比如说，在这个黑暗骑士，就是在2艘船上，一帮是正常的市民，一个是囚犯，让他们互相拿着这个遥控器可以引爆对方的船只。他其实就是把这样一个哲学史上很著名的电车难题拉过来，在讲思想，在讲观念，给你植入一个概念，这样的话给观众的体验是焕然一新的。就很多导演他拍的那种想表达哲学的电影，非常小众、晦涩、深奥，看着就容易睡着的那种。但是诺兰，我从来没有感受过电影原来有这样的功能。可能在这方面，我觉得诺兰的电影是让人感觉到非常值得去推崇的。
那你这么挺他？
对，我不同意，我当然不同意。
你说，
蝙蝠侠为什么跟别的那个片子不太一样，对吧？是对自我的怀疑，这就是他贯穿的一个状况。但这个东西其实特别泛泛，奥德赛不也是这样吗？奥德赛也在怀疑自己该不该回家，该不该这样。那哈姆雷特也怀疑自己，所有的一个家庭剧里面都会有的这样。我经常爱拿我的前半生来举例子，把一个角色和那个让来到提卡普里奥一样，重塑自我，重新找到自我的故事，没什么区别。我经常讲电影，它应该分为4种，仅仅从视听语言来讲的话，有点小突破，但正好又不超越我们的审美的这个台阶吧，所以说这是有气势。第二种电影是有性格，像黑泽明电影或者桑帕金帕的电影，还有一种电影是有生命感的电影，最高级的电影它是有命运的电影。其实诺兰应该来讲呢是最低的那一种，他有给你的小思索，给你的小视觉，给你的什么都给你一点点，大家看到的，正好的。比我的审美高那么一点点，也不高不那么多。
其实蛮符合这个全球化的审美。
对。
And both in your movies, people are always very ambiguous about his own identity, the fictional world and the true world. Why this kind of things attract you so much? I mean, it's become your major subject to. It's from a kind of philosophical thinking of.
My favorite types of films have always somehow related to the thriller genre. I like that form of storytelling, and because the camera pretends to be objective,
yes,
but it's not. You know, it's very subjective, particularly if you choose to use it in that way. And so, the great masters of suspense, like Hitchcock and Clouseau, they understood how to manipulate and how to align an audience's perceptions with one character or another, with their sympathies going to one character or another. And I think that stories in which you can't take identity for granted, even the identity of the narrator, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. You know, it's a fun thing to play with.
In the past, you always imagine the future, or imagine the maybe not very concrete things, concrete situation. But now you're facing the very concrete historical place and event. So I mean, the two imagination are very different for you, or similar? I mean, imagine the future.
Well, I found it creatively. I found it invigorating because the key difference is that the world of the film, which is something you're normally. The world of the film is something in which, as a writer, I'm normally engaged in constructing from the ground up, particularly in a film like Inception, for example, or Interstellar. You know, the script has to create the entire world of the film and the terms of it. That part of it was already done for me in Dunkirk. That exists, it's real. And so all I had to do was research it and read about it. And so my creative process was then different. I didn't have to build that, I had to explore it. Quite honestly, the feeling of presumptuousness about making a war film as somebody who's never been to war and would, I mean, it's my worst nightmare to imagine having to fight a war. I had the privilege, and my grandfather was in the Air Force and he died in World War II, and I took my children to go and visit his grave. He's buried in France, and when you look at the gravestones of the people who actually died in this, and you think, okay, we're going to make an entertainment, we're going to make a, you know, a cinematic telling of war. That's very daunting, and it's difficult to know how to go about that. And for me, the solution was to not look at Dunkirk as a war film, to look at it as a survival story. And that I felt confident of. I felt confident of being able to tell a suspenseful story about survival.
Could or should director be kind of philosopher? I mean, maybe your industry produce your own Michel Foucault, produce your own Nietzsche. Do you kind of see the parallel between them?
Well, I think for me, that would be too much of a, it would be too self-conscious to look at filmmaking that way. One of the pleasures of talking about the
film. But you
art,
are very self-conscious.
Well, not at different stages. So you become very self-conscious when you're talking about the film you've made because you're being asked, you know. For me, I like to really stay focused on the story and the themes of the film. I like to try and do that instinctively rather than self-consciously. And I sort of trust that the way in which I know how to make a film technically, that if there are things that are interesting to me philosophically, that they'll sort of somehow they'll be there. So for example, with Dunkirk, we've tried to make a very intense film that, and that was really the ambition. And so the film's attitude to war, therefore, for me, had to be not self-conscious. I didn't want to make a film that was an anti-war film or a pro-war film or anything. I wanted to make a film that present my point of view on it and enjoy that.
So from the
sounds a little self-indulgent.
Yeah. Do you worry about it, maybe the genre, maybe the big production, maybe stifling your creativity? I mean, from following Insomnia, the different parts. Do you worry about it? Or
I don't. I mean, I have worried about it in the past. In the case of this film, I very much chose to not worry about it. I very much chose to just say this is a huge film that for a British person particularly, it's a necessary film to be made. Somebody's going to make it. I want to be the person to make it. And so I'm a responsible filmmaker, and I try and, you know, we made the film efficiently. We made it for a good price for the studio and everything. That was our way of kind of dealing with the practicalities. But beyond that, I did not worry too much about the scale. I just said, you know what, we're just going to make the film right, and we need planes, and we need ships, and we need thousands of people, and we're just going to make this film. And I think that was important to do, because the rational part of my brain, the sort of, you know, the businessman, if you like,
你个人会更
欣喜的看到更多的刺猬的出现，还是狐狸的出现？
我希望他们都会越来越多吧，就是做刺猬越来越难了，变得在这个时代非常难了，就是再也没有一个单一命题可以让你执着下去了。
就如果说徐老师这个外表狐狸内心刺猬的话哈，实际上除了虚荣心之外的弱点，还有一点就是他有点贪婪，就是那么多优秀的样本他都想成为，他既想成为本雅明对吧，也想成为梁启超。
对，所以我是个非常不成熟的人格。现在好一点了，现在我觉得反正现在我意识到自己的能力有限了，我非常局限性，我只能成为我自己了。我现在开始接受这点了。以前我想成为各种人，
现在当然是他自己在不断的这个接收、抛弃，对吧？这个在升华的过程，你中间会希望有一天你终于不提这些人吗？
为什么要不提呀？
就是
他们就是我的一部分，为什么要不提呢？难道每个人不是被上一代人滋养吗？被死去的人滋养才变成现在？
就是六经助我嘛，就是
那是一个多么瞎扯淡的事儿。康有为那样的人，他最后受到廖平的影响，廖平受到王凯运的影响，每个人都有一套思想脉络，怎么可能假装自己是蹦出来的人呢？而且太阳底下无新鲜事，你能说出多少崭新的东西吗？
必须活在这些大师的阴影里。
我们必须承认这种阴影，在阴影中创造一点，或者假装创造一些可以超出阴影范围的东西。就像诺兰也在他的传统里面，没有那个 Kubrick， 没有这些 Ridley Scott 这些人，没有诺兰。我觉得我们做这个节目，包括做诺兰也好，我觉得我们都是在寻找某种历史意识。这些人，他不是突然发生的。可能我不喜欢这个时代的就是很多东西，原因就是大家误以为很多东西是崭新的。就是我可能希望自己是一个给一个时代提供某种就反作用力的人，或者说相反声音的人。对。
What's the most flawed part of yourself?
I don't want to go there. I drink too much tea.
From the first idea of the movie until the finish, the whole thing, the whole process, what's the weakest part of in the whole process yourself?
The weakest part?
Weakest, yeah.
Gosh. That's a difficult thing to answer because the way the job of director works is what I like about it is you're not responsible for any one thing. And so your responsibilities are spread, you get to dabble. You do a bit of everything. And so for me, it's not really about weaknesses and strengths, it's about an overall, I suppose an overall mediocrity. It's like, I have to be pretty good and kind of know quite a bit about a lot of different things. And so that's kind of fun. You don't have to be, you have experts around you. I have a fantastic director of photography. I have a fantastic designer. I have a fantastic editor and everything. And so I'm really just there to sort of, try and give them focus or try and inspire them to do their best work. And I think that's one of the reasons I really like the job of director. So I'm not the member of the team who has to have a specific strength, a specific weakness. I sort of need to be pretty good at a bunch of different things and kind of just keep
it. Must be Fox. Is there some kind of limitation you hated, you want to overcome it?
You feel very much when you're writing, you feel the limitations of your ability. Writing, I think, more than any other aspect of filmmaking, is the one where you have a notion, you have an idea underlying, and then you're confronted with the absolute difficulty of executing that. It's very, very tough.
Are there some writers inspire you a lot?
I was drawn to, the writer I always point to is Borges, the Argentinian writer.
Borges,
stories.
My favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Also about kind of inception.
Very much.
Yeah. I'll return to a movie director. You are inspired by Ridley Scott and this compare you today's achievement with him. So how do you think about your innovation with him?
How am I doing relative to that guy? I mean, geez, not for me to say. I think that, interestingly, the thing about Ridley Scott for me that captured my imagination as a teenager and has always stuck with me is his incredible ability to create worlds, his fascination with the visual side of filmmaking and ability to do that. And so when I started making my films, I think I pushed in a very different direction. And so my films have been more about narrative, I think, more about writing in a way. And it's almost that thing of the people you admire so much, you sort of need to do something different in a different way.
Yeah, today's you are viewed as the representative for today's Hollywood. And how do you think about the tradition of Hollywood? I mean, from the John Ford, from the Coppola until James Cameron, until you. I mean, you're part of tradition, or how do you define the tradition? And do you contribute something different in the tradition?
Well, I think it comes back to everybody here wanting me to talk about judge myself. Well, no, it's very tough. What I feel a responsibility to do, what I'm trying to do, is add something to that development or that evolution. But I would be lying if I said I knew what it was that I could or had done. I've been very gratified by some of the responses to Dunkirk, where people have felt that it is different or that it adds something a little bit different to what a summer blockbuster from a Hollywood studio can be, whatever. The thing I've tried to do was I played a very big part in the growth of or the dominance, I would say, of superhero films and of franchise properties and everything, and that was an incredibly important thing in my career. I've always tried to balance that side of my filmmaking with original films and bring things that aren't familiar to an audience. But it's difficult. I mean, in television, everyone always talks about how great TV is today and how amazing it is and how much better it is. And I think films, we have the opposite. You look at it and you say, well, if this film doesn't have some unique point of view to it, if it doesn't have a strong point of view, it's not going to be interesting to people of today.
Could you imagine if you were in Dunkirk, what kind of role you will be played? You will be desperate, or you'll be hopeful, or brave, or cowed?
I think what the film tries to say very strongly is we cannot know until we are faced with the situation. We like to think that we would behave in a noble way. I wanted to be more real than that. Human beings, we're very flawed creatures.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Running out.
Thank you.
Yeah, next time we can talk about boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Be well known in China?
Yeah, quite popular among writers and thinkers. Yeah.
Interesting.
But good trip.
Thank you very much. Nice.
Take care. 感觉刚刚开始采访结束了。他是个超级自我分析的人，还说我们问他自我分析，他自己就是自我分析的人。他是啊。自我分析可以养成吗？当然了，这英国训练最重要的就是自我分析啊。
了解之后，你对他的评价比之前会高一点呢，还是说是接受存在即是合理的事实？
我就稍微更理解一点，在他们做出判断的时候没那么粗暴了。每个人每个行业里面都有他内在的脉络，我们很多外面的人看不到他内在的脉络是什么，所以这过程中帮我更理解了一些内在的脉络，其实也是帮我更理解这个社会的构成嘛。
看你一直在做技术。